So I graduate from Wharton and I go home to get the congratulations. And what happens? They get into the biggest argument of all time.
Oh boy.
And my dad storms out of the house and slams the door. I turn to my mom and I go, Mom, the way he resents you all these years, have you been cheating on Dad? And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, where did that question even come from? I never even thought that idea in my whole life. And then I'm thinking, whoa, when did I become like the rudest kid in the world asking his mom a question like that? Like, wait till one of those kids asks you a question like that, right? You don't want that. That's rude. And then I'm thinking, how come she ain't answering the question? And then she goes, he's not your real father. Your real father was a doctor at the fertility clinic we went to for 6 years trying to have you. And you look just like that guy. And I'm like, see what?
Hold on. That's like absolutely real.
Every word of it.
Yeah, I don't think you can make that up.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to another episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're joined by Clint Arthur. Clint, thanks for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here, man. Really. We made it. We made it happen. It was sketchy. We weren't sure if it was going to I sure didn't think it was going to happen. I was like, oh man, another one. But we made it. Yes.
And if it's any consolation, we made it and we have 3 out of 4 kids in bed. So for us, that's a big win, Clint.
That's always a win.
Amen. Yeah. Hey, I have learned in life, you got to take your wins where you can get them.
Mm-hmm. Especially on a Monday.
Yeah. But I never know what day it is. So that's... I really don't. I thought it was Tuesday, but whatever,
Tuesday Eve, it's close enough. Now, Clint, question we always like to start off with and get to know our guest and let everybody who's listening to this conversation know our guest. Who is Clint Arthur?
Clint Arthur is the dream maker. No, seriously. I got a call from one of my associates out there in the world, this guy who owns selfgrowth.com. And I tried to get I met his wife at a conference. It was a publicity conference. And I wanted her to come to my TV publicity seminar to get her on TV. But she said she had to lose 20 pounds first. And of course, she never lost the 20 pounds, right? She only gained weight until they got divorced, and then she lost the weight. But in any case, it's funny how that works. But in any case, the guy calls me up one day and he goes, Clint, I think I got you finally figured out. We have a mutual friend named Paul Nebb. Paul Nebb is an IT consultant, like cybersecurity, cloud computing, that kind of stuff. And in his spare time, as a hobby, he's a paramedic ambulance driver. And my seat just went down. Here we go. We're better now. Okay, so Paul Nebb comes to my TV publicity training program, Celebrity Launchpad, and he goes on a lot of TV shows. And one of the things that I teach my students is that you should try to find awards. You should apply for awards because awards help to distinguish you as being better than other people. So this guy goes and applies and wins Hero of the Year from the Times Square Alliance because of his work during the pandemic on the front lines as a first responder. And remember when Times Square, there was no one in Times Square on New Year's Eve? Remember that? Mm-hmm. Because it was closed. Yep. Mayor, communist Mayor de Blasio shut down Times Square. Nobody was allowed to go except for him and his wife and 35 first responders and their families. And Paul Nebb was one of those. And me and my wife went with Paul Nebb. We were in Times Square when nobody was in Times Square. Okay. So that's why the guy calls me up and goes, I think I figured you out, because you help make people's dreams come true. That's really what I do. People have, I think everybody has a secret dream of some kind of like amazing thing that could possibly happen to you, you know, whoever you are. You have a secret dream that you wish maybe could happen, but most people are too afraid to go after their dream because they don't want to lose. They don't want to fail. They don't want to look stupid to their family and friends or to themselves. And that's the risk you got to take if you ever want to have your dreams come true, is you got to take the chance of losing. But, you know, I don't really think there is losing. I think there's just data. You know, there's what you want, there's what you try to do, and then there's what you get, which is never usually exactly what you want, usually. And my job is to help people to get closer to the dream that you have in your secret heart. How's that?
There you go.
That's good. Now, can we talk about how you reached your dream? Because when we were kind of preparing for this, one of the things that you mentioned was and these are Clint's words. I'm not saying this about Clint. These were Clint's words. You said at one point you were the biggest loser in Hollywood, but obviously, you know, things are a stark contrast from what they were then.
They are, but I still have not reached my dream. I'm still working on it. I really am. I'm like a complete work in progress. And I think it's a good attitude for everybody to have, you know, to be a work in progress as a person, as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a businessman, as an artist, whatever you are, you know. You know, unless you're Picasso, even Picasso was a work in progress. The great master himself, you know, he was continuously evolving and getting better and better and better. But I was the biggest loser in Hollywood. I always wanted to be special because my parents were arguing all the time, and I had some kind of a unconscious, subconscious knowing that the reason they were arguing was because of me. And I was right, as you'll see in a minute. And I came up with this dream. I came up with this plan. The plan was I was going to go to the best business school in the world because I was always into money. Ever since I was a little kid, I started working when I was 10 years old, handing out flyers on a street corner in New York City for $1 an hour. And I always loved money, so I wanted to go to the best business school in the world. And I figured if I could graduate from the Wharton Business School, where Elon Musk went, and the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, he went there, and Trump went there. So many famous people, Michael Milken, a lot of smart, rich people went there. If I could go there, I would get super special, and maybe I'd be special enough to keep my parents from arguing so much. So I graduate from Wharton, and I go home to get the congratulations. And what happens? They get into the biggest argument of all time.
Oh, boy.
And my dad storms out of the house and slams the door. I turn to my mom, and I go, you know, Mom, the way he resents you all these years, have you been cheating on Dad? And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, where did that question even come from? I never even thought that idea in my whole life. And then I'm thinking, whoa, when did I become like the rudest kid in the world asking his mom a question like that? Like, wait till one of those kids asks you a question like that, right? You don't want that. That's rude. And then I'm thinking, how come she ain't answering the question? And then she goes, he's not your real father. Your real father was a doctor at the fertility clinic we went to for 6 years trying to have you, and you look just like that guy. And I'm like, see what?
Hold on. That's like absolutely real.
Every word of it.
Yeah, I don't think you can make that up.
You can't make that up. You can't make up what happened to me. The next
Right.
day is a Monday. I get on the phone. I call up the investment bank on the 87th floor of number 1 World Trade Center. Hello, Mr. Vice President of the investment banking company who offered me a job. Well, I decided I don't want to be an investment banker anymore. Even though everybody who graduates from Wharton in my era was going into investment banking. That was the big goal, is what you wanted to do to make all the money and get rich. Like many of my fraternity brothers would go on to become millionaires and billionaires with a B, many of them, through investment banking, hedge funds, all that stuff. And so what did I do? Well, I ran out to Hollywood and started going on auditions and writing screenplays. Most people go to Hollywood to lose themselves. I went there to find myself. And I found myself becoming a very special person, the Wharton Business School taxi driver. That's right. I drove yellow cab number 6087 for 6 years. And you don't drive it. You see, maybe people, I take a lot of Ubers, and I asked the Uber person, how long you been doing this? He's like, I just do this for fun, just to get out of the house, You don't drive a taxi for 6 years for fun.
For fun. No, especially down where you were.
No, you don't do that just to get out of the house. You do that because you got to survive. You got to pay child support. You got to pay, slip fee. I lived on a boat. Tony Robbins had a 400 square foot apartment that he lived in and washed dishes in the bathtub. My whole boat was like 220 square feet. So I got Tony beat by 180 square feet. And that's why I say, judging by Tony's story of what a loser he was, I'm a bigger loser than even Tony, because I had 180 less square feet than Tony Robbins. So there you go. I chased that Hollywood dream for 13 years. And, people ask me all the time, do you resent wasting all those years? And I actually don't, because it was that whole experience from which I learned the most important lesson in business. Now, when I got interviewed on the Today Show, who interviewed me? Brooke Shields. And there was a million Columbia Journalism School graduates who could have been hired for $1 to interview Clint Arthur on the Today Show. They would have done it for free just to get on the Today Show. But they paid Brooke Shields a lot of money. Why? Because she's Brooke Shields. Because she's somebody. And the most important lesson that I learned, and the most important lesson in business, is that who you are is more important than what you actually do or sell. And until you understand that, you think about, and by the way, here I am with Brooke Shields in the studio on the Today Show. Is that it?
Awesome.
There it is. There it is. And until you understand that, it's a very frustrating life. If you think about it, let's just put it in terms of everyday people. There's a lot of men and women in the world, but there's only the one that you want, that one who, right? And if there's a person you want to be with, you've got to be the who that they want. So what do? Well, you try to make yourself a bigger who. And I've had a lot of experiences where women would come and do my training programs, either my TV training or my other celebrity trainings that I do. And when I say celebrity, I'm not famous. My clients are not famous. But in the eyes of our clients and prospects, we're celebrities. So that's why I call it celebrity training. And I have had a lot of women come through the trainings, and they're single when they come in, but then they become somebody, and then they get scooped up by some guy, because people want to be with people who got stuff going on. People want to be with people who are, doing stuff with their life, not just a lump on a log, but have a purpose, have a mission, have a direction, a vision for where they want to go. I think that's what people want. And that's really the whole lesson of my 13 years of driving after a dream that never showed up. All I got was my head smashed up against a brick wall, bloody and damaged, and my heart, destroyed by being told a million times, Clint, you suck. Clint, your writing sucks. Clint, you're too old. Clint, you're not good enough. I heard that. That's all I heard for 13 years. It was a very damaging time. And I had to relearn how to be successful again, step by step, little tiny steps.
So during those 13 years and hearing that, being denied probably over and over again, how did you keep going, persevering? What did you have people in your corner? Was it just you?
There was no one in my corner. There was no one. I thought I could just do it all myself because I had succeeded in doing everything myself.
Right.
I graduated from the best business school in the world. There was no one in my corner, especially not baby's mama. Her agenda. She had her agenda, and my agenda was not part of her agenda. And I was only there until she kicked me out of the house because I was weighing her down. She didn't want to have a taxi driver as her baby's daddy, living with them. That's not what she wanted. She was playing as a player in Hollywood. At that point, she had 6 actors who were regulars on pilots. Like, they were cast as regulars on network pilots. She was like really rocking. And here I am off to go drive the cab from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So there was nobody in my corner. So how did I keep going? I'll tell you how I kept going. Because when I met baby's mama, my chair just sank down again. Let's go back up again. When I met baby's mama, here's the story. We walk into this bar in West Hollywood called Dan Tana's on our second date. And we walk in the door and she goes, "Oh, wow, there's George Clooney. Let's go say hello." And I go, "You know George Clooney?" And she goes, "Yeah, I used to date him and his best friend at the same time." So we walk over to George Clooney and she goes, "Hey, George, how you doing?" And he goes, "Ah, Sarah, I am so effing wasted right now." Now, he said the actual word, not effing, okay? But I'm being polite here.
Thank you.
See? Because I know you got 4 kids in bed, so I just want to keep it clean. So she goes, "Oh, congratulations, George. ER." This was when ER just came out. And he had all these tattoos all over his face and neck because he was filming a movie for Quentin Tarantino called From Dusk Till Dawn. So she introduces me to George Clooney. I shake his hand. He introduces his supermodel that he's with to us. We say hello. Then the maitre d' comes and says, "Madam, your table is ready." And we go and sit down to eat dinner, me and future baby's mama. So I say to future baby's mama, how the heck do you know George Clooney? And she goes, "Well, when I was his agent for 10 years. When I was his agent for 10 years, I started dating him and I was dating his best friend at the same time. And you see, I always knew that he was going to be George Clooney. And he always knew that he was going to be George Clooney. But the rest of Hollywood did not know that he was going to be George Clooney, the superstar that he became." And she said, if you look him up on the internet and look up his IMDb, which is the actor's resume of all the shows that they've done, you'll see he was in pilot after pilot after pilot, and he was on series after series after series, and everything got canceled or he got fired. For 10 years, Hollywood denied George Clooney the ability to be George Clooney, but he knew he was going to be George Clooney. And she told me it takes 10 years to make it in Hollywood. So here I am. I'm going through. I'm thinking I'm at year 8. Only 2 more years to go, right? Year 9. It's coming next year. Year 10. Ho! Year 10. Any day now. Year 11. I'm overdue. Year 12. Man, what's taking so long? I'm way overdue. Finally, it gets to be 13 years, and it's like New Year's Eve of the millennium. December 31st, 1999. What were you doing? Were you getting any Y2K cash, or were you too young for that? Were you partying with family and friends? I was behind the wheel of yellow cab number 6087. In the back of the cab were these 2 guys I was driving to a party in the Hollywood Hills, and I'm listening in on their conversation, and I hear that they're MBA interns at Goldman Sachs. And I hear one of these guys say, "Hey, man, did you hear about Mr. Carrera? They made him the last partner right before the Goldman IPO, and he cashed out $1 gazillion." And I'm like, you talking about Chris Carrera? How do you know Mr. Carrera? Chris Carrera was a pledge in my fraternity. When I was the pledge master, I used to make those little punks dance around the living room of the house with their tighty whities on top of their heads. And now he just cashed out $1 gazillion as the last partner made before Goldman Sachs went public. And I'm driving a cab. I go home to my little boat that night, climb up in my V berth. I pull my cash out of my sock where I would hide it so I wouldn't get robbed. $513. Driving a cab on New Year's Eve of the millennium. I was supposed to be special. So that was the night. That was the night. And, you know, that's why they had me on the Today Show. They, you know, the topic that they had me on to discuss on December 31st, 2013. So it just, you know, Tony Robbins says, you will overestimate what you can do in a year, and you will underestimate what you can do in a decade, right? So I finally finished driving a cab like January, February of 2001. And on December 31st, 2013, I was interviewed by Brooke Shields on the Today Show. And the topic was the push-pull of life. And what they really wanted me to talk about was, how did I know to quit after 13 years? Why 13 years? And it just got to the point where, you know, like that guy in the backseat of the cab talking about the kid who was 2 years younger than me, who was now a partner at Goldman Sachs, and I'm making $500 a week as a cab driver, and it's not happening. I said to myself, how much longer can I keep throwing my life away chasing a dream that's never going to happen? I gave it the best shot, 13 freaking years. And I swore an oath that night that I was never going to write again. And I kept that oath all the way through till October of 2008. You know what was going on in the world? A financial, you know, collapse was going on. And I was scared. So I went to a men's self-help meeting. And what's that look like? It's like 18 naked guys dancing around a campfire, and I'm one of them. And I see this guy jump over the campfire, and I noticed he was very hairy. And then I saw the shaman on the other side of the yellow and orange crackling flames. And he goes, "You don't know it yet, but you're already dead." What are you talking about, man? I'm the most successful guy on the team. 8 years ago, I was a cab driver. Now I'm a millionaire. I was living on a little boat. Now I live in a mansion. You're already dead and you just don't know it. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I couldn't get that out of my mind. For months, I would wake up out of sound sleep in the middle of the night. I'm already dead. What does he mean? And I didn't know what it meant. And it came to be New Year's Day of 2009. And I was thinking, I couldn't stop thinking about this guy. I'm like, I think I'm alive. I don't think I'm dead. I think I'm alive. But what if I was going to die at the end of this year? What if 2009 was going to be the last year of my life? What would I want to accomplish? And I pulled out a pad and a pen to write the list. And I was blown away because what's the first thing I write on the list? I got to write my book about what I learned at the Wharton Business School that helped me to become successful as a businessman once I stopped trying to become a screenwriter and a movie star. And I wrote that book in like 8 days.
Oh, well.
And I self-published it on Amazon.com, and I waited for all the sales to roll in. And boy, did those sales ever roll in. All 8 of those sales rolled in 2009. Maybe.
But you're still alive, so this is good.
And you're a published
I was
author.
live. I'm alive. I'm alive. So, but I did a smart thing. Like, I've always believed in education, obviously, and I sought out a mentor to help me, and his name was Jack Canfield. And I said, Jack, how do you sell 500 million chicken soup for the soul books? And he said, because I wanted to sell books. And he said, well, you got to be kind of famous. And because people don't buy books from people who aren't. People don't buy books from nobodies. They only buy books from people who are kind of famous or famous. So I started going on TV. And I paid a publicist $6,000 to book me on my first 4 TV appearances on little tiny shows, Sacramento, Phoenix, another one in Sacramento, and one in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I show the videos to my wife on my laptop computer. And I said, honey, what do you think? And she goes, wow, I think you suck. And I'm like, you're right. And I if I'm ever going to fulfill my big dream of getting on the Today Show, that was my dream then. It's funny how dreams continue to grow. It's really interesting, you know. And if I'm ever going to make my dream come true of getting on the Today Show, I'm going to have to get a lot better. So I'm going to hire that publicist to book me on 10 more shows. And my wife goes, whoa. Why do you keep paying that lady? Why don't you just book yourself on TV? And I'm like, why don't I do what about what? How do you book yourself on TV? And she goes, you'll figure it out. So I woke up that night at 2:30 in the morning. I went up to my office on the second floor of our 3,000 square foot villa that I built for us in the Hollywood Hills. And I went on Google and I looked up, the first one I looked up was Fox TV, Jacksonville, Florida. Now, why Jacksonville, Florida? Because you could fly on Southwest Airlines cheap from Los Angeles to Jacksonville, Florida. So I started calling stations like that, like places where Southwest Airlines would fly. So I could go there cheap. And it took me 9.5 weeks before I got a single TV producer to say, yeah, are you available on this date? Okay, why don't you come in and we'll do it. And that's how I started. And my first year, I booked myself on 7 TV shows. My second year, I booked myself on 20 TV shows. I saved a lot of money by doing that. And it was really exciting and fun. And I started getting better and better. And my 32nd TV appearance was on NBC New York City. And my 57th TV appearance, the Today Show called me. And they said, hey, Clint, this is Allie calling from the Today Show. And we're wondering if you could join us in the studio on December 31st for a special segment we're doing on New Year's Eve about the push and pull of life. And, you know, Brooke Shield goes, you know, Clint, you talk a lot about being comfortable outside of your comfort zone. I said, yeah, life begins where your comfort zone ends. She goes, oh, that sounds scary. I said, when it's scary is when it's great. And I had no idea how true that really was because, like, I do a lot of scary stuff. And I found, like, first going on the Today Show was really scary. I mean, I was surprised. I had done 57 TV appearances and I was freaking scared, man. There's 100 people in the studio. There's 1,000 lights in the ceiling and 10 cameras and Brooke Shields sitting 5 feet away from me. It was really scary. But what I find, it's like my favorite quote from General George Patton, the man who saved the free world in World War II. He said, accept the challenges so that you could feel the exhilaration of victory, because that is how you really come alive, when you feel the exhilaration of victory. And for those who have never felt the exhilaration of victory, for me, it felt way different than I ever thought it would really feel. Way different. Didn't even feel like I didn't even understand what exhilaration was, but that was the scary thing. And then, during the pandemic, when my wife and I was on a speaking tour. I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm not even a speaker. I became a speaker to sell books, right? Because how do you sell books? Well, TV is one way, but being a speaker is a really good way to get in front of people and talk about your books. So I was on a speaking tour, and I was going to go to 8 different cities. And we got to the 3rd city. I was the host of Tony Robbins' 60th birthday party. There we are. And I said, Tony, what's the most important thing you ever learned? First of all, I said, Tony, when I was a cab driver, I couldn't even afford to buy the CDs of Personal Power 2 because they were $30 more than the cassette tapes. So I got the cassette tapes. And tonight, I was sitting in the front row here at your birthday party. And he goes, I'm so glad it worked out for you, brother. And he gave me a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. And then I said, Tony, what's the most important thing you ever learned? He said, life is happening for us. So then all the rest of my speaking gigs canceled because of the pandemic. So I said to my wife, hey, do you want to go back to our apartment in the Midtown Manhattan on the 13th floor of an apartment building and be quarantined in our little apartment for 2 weeks? Or do you want to go to rent a house in Arizona or Florida or someplace where we don't know anything about anything? Or do you want to go to our favorite vacation resort in Acapulco, Mexico? So, and order room service for 2 weeks. So naturally, that's what we did. So we go down there, and this is when it got scary. Remember when the State Department made an announcement and said, oh, maybe you don't know because you're Canadian. The United States State Department made an announcement. Oh, we recommend that all United States citizens return to America to shelter in place. Mm. Okay? And I'm in my hotel suite in Acapulco, Mexico. And you know what I did? I rented myself a house in Acapulco, Mexico for 32 days because I figured that'll get me through it, right? Here I am, and I'm watching on CNN where thousands of people are being herded through these large corridors at O'Hare Airport in Chicago because they're all returning from abroad to shelter in place. And me, I'm staying in Acapulco, Mexico. And then we got another house. We moved from that one to a better one for another 30 days. And then we found another one that we stayed in for 60 days. And by the end of those 4.5 months that we were in Acapulco, Mexico, I did something really scary. I pulled out my checkbook and I wrote a check for 7 figures and bought a house in Acapulco, Mexico. And I had a lot of friends telling me, are you crazy spending all that money in a house in Acapulco? That was really scary, but it was really great. It was like life is happening for us. Moving to Acapulco has been the best thing ever. No stress, great weather. We swim in the warm ocean every single day. We live like kings. We have a giant mansion. We do our seminars there. People fly to Acapulco and pay me a lot of money to come and hear me talk for 6 days. And we treat them like princes and princesses because we are the kings and the queens. We have a gourmet chef, we have a butler, we have gluten-free, sugar-free menu. It's just a total deluxe lifestyle that people come down and participate in and get to experience with us. I don't think they could experience it otherwise because we live in like the billionaire neighborhood of Mexico. But when it's scary is when it's great.
Wow.
Did that answer your question?
All in a roundabout way. Yeah. No, so like even that when it's scary, like okay, there's some of us who didn't end up buying a house in Acapulco and different things like that, right? But everybody's situation is different. And then those moments where it's like, okay, do we jump or do we stay, right? And I think that's the biggest thing that everybody eventually will have in common one day. Everybody goes through those situations of what's my next move? What am I going to do? And like you said, right? Like there's no like we make a mistake, but you still learn from that, right? So I think that's the biggest thing to, for people listening. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Good for you, right? But everybody else, it's like, okay, no, I did something like this, maybe not on that grand of scale, but all something that I think we all can participate in and deal with.
I agree with everything you said, except for that, we make a mistake. I don't think there are mistakes. I think life is happening for us. It really is. It's like we get. One of my TV publicity students was this woman named Lisa Sasevich, and she was a pretty big deal in the experts industry. She ran a seminar called Speak to Sell Boot Camp for 10 years and made millions and millions of dollars with that thing. And she was my first celebrity client to come to my TV publicity boot camp, which is called Celebrity Launchpad. So I got this idea in my head, and like impulsively, I called her on her cell phone. I said, Lisa, I came up with a great idea for your pitch for when you come to pitch the TV producers at Celebrity Launchpad. She goes, okay, what is it? I said, 3 things single moms should never say if they want to make more money, because she's a single mom. And she goes, oh, I would never say that. I would never say anything like that. I don't put myself out there as a single mother. I don't go after single mothers because there's no money in single mothers. I would never say anything like that. And I'm like, oh no, I screwed up my first celebrity client. And then I said, okay, how about 3 things moms should never say if they want to make more money? And she goes, oh, I could do that. So I go, okay, what's the first thing moms should never say if they want to make more money? And she goes, the first thing moms should never say if they want to make more money is, let me think about it. Because you don't need to think about it. You know if you want to buy it or if you don't want to buy it. Don't tell the salesman you want to think about it. All that does is opens up a loop that has to be closed. He's going to be calling you, trying to get you to say yes, and you're just going to say no later on. So make a decision and tell the guy no. I said, okay, good. What's the second thing moms should never say if they want to make more money? And she said, you should think about it. Don't tell your clients and prospects to think about it. Get them to make a decision. You don't want to open up a loop. You want them to say yes or no. A no is just as good as a yes because it gets you to the next person, and that person might be the yes. So don't open up that loop. And I'm like, okay, cool. What's the third thing moms should never say if they want to make more money? And she said, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. See, men don't say that. This is what she said. Men don't say that. Men go through an experience, and sometimes they win, sometimes they don't win, but whatever it is, they don't have regrets. They don't look back and say, I should have done this or I should have done that. They take the lesson and they keep moving forward. So that's why I thought that was a good story that related to what you just said, because it really is just, it's information and it's all learning. Look, I've made some mistakes. I got swindled out of $50,000 in cash by a Chinese guy who got me to invest in a restaurant project in Shanghai.
Sounded like a good idea at the time.
Oh man, that seemed like a really good idea. I've made some mistakes. Hopefully, thank God, knocking on wood, thank God I haven't made too many mistakes. And when it comes to the seminars that I do and the trainings that I do, I've been really, really successful because like one of the things that I really believe in is investing in mentors and education. I told you I invested in Jack Canfield. My biggest mentor has been this guy named Dan Kennedy. I didn't even invest that much money in Dan Kennedy, but I went to a lot of his speeches and seminars. I bought a lot of his books and products and really, really studied him. And he is the one who really opened my eyes to this idea of being a bigger who, like I was talking about. You want to be like, you see that girl, how are you going to get that girl? You got to become the one who she wants, or vice versa. And he put it really eloquently one time. He said, I knew I had a problem. My wife broke her wrist and I knew I needed an operation on my wife's wrist. What I did not know was who I was going to pay a lot of money to fix my wife's wrists. And really, I believe that that's everything in life. Who are you? You asked me, who is Clint Arthur? This is the big question of life. Who are you? This is the question of every Hollywood movie, honestly, and every great work of literature or art. The question is, who am I? Who am I? And that's what my whole life has been really, really intensely focused on. My whole, not just my career, my whole life has really been intensely focused on this idea of becoming a bigger who to others. Call those people my clients or prospects, and to myself and to my wife and to my dog. She thinks I'm a pretty big who anyway, but really being the biggest who that you can be is what life is really all about. That's what I think.
Excellent. Now, Clint, there's one thing I want to go back to, and if you're not comfortable answering this question, I will happily edit this part out, but I'll be remiss not to ask. So early on in the show, we talked about, the question that you confronted your mom with and finding out, that the man you grew up knowing was your father wasn't actually your biological father. I'm curious, kind of what happened with those relationships after that. Did you ever get to know your bio father at all? And how's your relationship with the man who raised you?
Fascinating. Glad you asked that question. I don't get asked that question a lot. So, I got fiercely independent throughout my 20s and 30s. And then my parents got divorced after 36 years of marriage. Had a bitter 5-year divorce. And then when my dad retired, that's when I started calling him a lot. He asked me to call him. He's like, hey, when you're driving around, just give me a call. And I started talking to him a lot. And, the funny thing is that my mom was an artist. My mom, she was a fine artist. She ran a design studio in New York City. And, she's where I get my more eccentric side. My dad was an accountant.
Okay.
My mom was the eccentric one, So one time she did something so crazy. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'm talking to my dad, and I said, she did this really crazy thing. And I'm like, man, she's so freaking crazy. Is she my real mother? I actually said that to him, right? And we both cracked up laughing. We never actually had the conversation, I know you're not my biological father, or, I know I'm not you're not my biological son. We never had that conversation, but we both cracked up laughing when I asked if she was my real mother. So as far as my actual biological father, I tried finding him 3 times. And I'm, 13 years chasing the Hollywood dream. I'm a pretty persistent person, right? So when I tell you I tried 3 times, I tried pretty hard 3 times. The third time, see, there was a second part of the story, which is not my story, so I don't exactly tell it, but there was another doctor at the fertility clinic who was the man in charge of the clinic, and I knew his name. So I called him up one time. But this was my third time trying to find my biological father. And I said, Dr. Savis, my name is Clint. I'm Nadine's son. He said, yes, Nadine. I remember her. She was such an energetic young woman. I said, yeah, well, she told me that she had an affair with a doctor at the clinic and that he was my biological father. And I was trying to find him, and I was wondering if you knew what happened to him. And he said, are you married? I said, yes, I am. He said, do you have any children? I said, I have a daughter. She's 18 years old at the time. He said, my advice to you is to forget about the past. Enjoy your life. Enjoy what you have and leave the past alone. And that was like such a powerful message from the universe, from a direction that I never anticipated ever experiencing in my life. That was the end of my trials of trying to find my biological father. How's that? Think I made that one up?
Oh man.
No, that's fascinating, but no, definitely not something that you can make up. But no, you've had some really interesting things happen in your life now too. Now there's another thing I wanted to ask you about. It was Mandalay Bay. Apparently, it sounds like you happened to be there when there's the actual shooting that happened.
Yeah, you're talking about one of the stories from my Pulitzer-nominated book, Wisdom of the Men, which, I've been telling quite a few stories from that book tonight. Have you read that book?
No.
Or just these are show notes? Okay. So, part of my whole strategy to become a bigger who is to have friends who are bigger who's. So I try to meet celebrities. And, I worked in Las Vegas for a long time in the gourmet food industry. That's how I got out of cab driving. And I arranged to meet Mike Tyson. He was having a show at the MGM Grand, and I was supposed to attend the show. And after the show, I was going to meet Mike Tyson and get a photo with him. That was the night. So the show is over, and I'm getting excited because I'm going to meet the champ. And all of a sudden, the manager of the theater comes out on stage. He goes, ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We have been informed that there is an active shooter on the strip. We don't know anything else. That's all we know. And the safest thing you can do is just stay here where we are. It's not in the MGM Grand, that we know for sure. But that's all we know. So we're just going to ask you to remain here, and we'll update you as soon as we know any more information. And I'm like looking around the theater, and I'm thinking, what if the shooters come in here with machine guns and start plowing us all down? Would we trap like rats? And I'm with my friends and my wife because we were all going to meet the champ. And everybody was nervous, but we tried to stay cool. 30 minutes later, he comes out. He goes, ladies and gentlemen, we've been informed that the active shooter activity has been contained. If you want to leave the theater, you may leave the theater at this time. And I said, and I was with like 6 friends and my wife. I said, okay, everybody, follow me. Because I know every hotel in Las Vegas like the back of my hand because of selling gourmet food. I'm behind the scenes, but in the back of the house, in all the kitchens and all the back hallways. I know everything about Las Vegas. I said, everybody, follow me. So I take them through some back hallways, and we emerge in the self-parking garage behind the MGM Grand, and we go out onto Koval Lane, and then we walk down to the Hard Rock, and we sat in the Hard Rock until 2:00 in the morning eating hamburgers and drinking milkshakes until they told us we could go back to our hotels because we were staying at Aria, which is on the Strip. And that was the weekend of my big speaker training event that we did called Extreme VIP Speaker Training. And man, that was a really good one. Everybody was on edge, you know, because when it's scary is when it's great. It really, truly is. And the scariness of that whole Las Vegas, Mandalay Bay shooting event, it just made that whole weekend so much more intense and everybody was so much more alive. When it's scary is when it's great.
Awesome. Now, I kind of wanted, one thing I like to do is kind of take one's hindsight and be able to apply that as someone else's foresight. So I want you to think back to when, you know, maybe that first year of driving cab in Hollywood. If you could take a cab ride with Clint Arthur, knowing what you know today, what would you say to him?
What would I say to the cab driver, Clint Arthur?
Yes.
Wow. I would say this. This is what I say to people now in my classes a lot. I would say, look, you know, a lot of people, when the ship sinks and you're in the life raft and you're rowing to try to get to shore, a lot of people are like, when I get to shore, that's when I'll be happy. When I get to shore, that's when it's going to be really great, when my life is going to be the best. But you may never get to shore. And you need to keep in mind that we are not promised even one more day on this earth. We only have right now. So as tough as things are, the key, I think, to really getting the most out of your life when you're pursuing the dream is to enjoy the times when you're in the life raft trying to get to the shore. If you're not enjoying those times, you're wasting your life. So do your best to get rid of the resentment and the anger and don't destroy yourself with drugs and alcohol, which I almost did. But the funny thing is that I recently did a 14-day water fast where all I did was drink water for 14 days. And at one point, I had a tremendous release of bile. Yellow bile came out of me in the toilet bowl one morning. I'm like, wow. And ever since this 14-day water fast, my wife says I'm a much nicer person. It's really interesting. It's really fascinating. And I think, you know, that she explains it that in Chinese medicine, the liver is where anger is stored. So she thinks that a lot of the anger, and I thought of this because, you know, in those days, that's when baby's mama kicked me out of the house. I'm driving a taxi making $500 a week, paying her $482 a month for child support, which just so happens to be the exact amount of her Mercedes 300E monthly payment. So I had a lot of anger in those days and resentment. But ever since my 14-day water fast, I'm a nicer person. And I think because a lot of that anger came out of me in the bile. That's what I would say.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you were able to become the bigger who that you wanted to be and attract your wife, because obviously you've referenced her many times. She's obviously been able to give you some really good insights. She's willing to be honest with you about your TV appearances and all of that good stuff. So
she's a great lady. She's a great lady, and we've had a lot of fun. Here's a nice picture of us. This was in Paris. There we are. This is an image that I call This is a celebrity lifestyle marketing asset. See, there's different kinds of things that celebrities do. You know, like Kim Kardashian, right? There's different types of images that Kim Kardashian puts out. Okay. One of those images is Kim Kardashian on TV. So I showed you me and Brooke Shields in the studio at the Today Show. That's me doing TV. Another thing Kim Kardashian puts out is her and famous people, right? So I showed you me and Tony Robbins, although Tony Robbins is not really famous. I showed you me. Here we are, me and Mike Tyson. There we go, me and the champ.
There you go. You did get the picture after all.
I had to go back. A couple months later. But I made it happen. Me and Martha Stewart at Carnegie Hall in her dressing room. I said, Martha, what's the most important thing you ever learned? She said, when I was a little girl, my daddy told me that I could do anything, and I believed him. You know, and a lot of the stuff that I talk about, people don't think you can do it, but anything's possible. Here's me. There's my wife. Can you see her? There she is.
Oh, yeah.
There, in our outdoor dining room in Acapulco that I just built. I built that outdoor dining room on the corner of the lot. That's a celebrity lifestyle marketing asset. Here I am with Dr. Oz. See, these are what I call celebrity attachment photos. See, that's a specific kind of marketing that celebrities do with other celebrities on TV, living the lifestyle. Like, you know, how many pictures of Kim Kardashian have you seen in Cabo next to the pool, right? Or, living the fabulous life. They do those things not just because they enjoy doing it. They put those images out there because those are aspirational images that people want to aspire to live like that. And that's what attracts you to these giant celebrities. So that's why I have these kinds of images in my marketing.
Now, Clint, for those who want to learn more about the work that you're doing, who want to get a copy of your book, and really just if there's anything that you'd like to share that we can expect from you, and I'll, even though we have the website listed, I'm just going to pop it up here so that we can see it another way. And for those who are listening, it's www.clint.com.
Why Clint with 3 T's? Because I mostly work with experts, people who ostensibly get paid for what you know or what you do for people. And one of the experts, who is my client, invented the science of namology, which is, what does your name mean is going to happen to you? And she said to me one time, Clint, I wish you could add an extra T to the end of your name because the T's always end up on top, like Trump. And I said, wow, that's really interesting. And I tried to get Clint with 2T's.com and I couldn't get that, but I could get Clint with 3T's.com. And that's why I have Clint with 3T's.com. And it's the easy way to remember where to go to get Clint. So you can find out about all my different seminars and trainings that I do there. My book, Wisdom of the Men, which many of the stories I've been telling tonight have been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in that book, Wisdom of the Men, and that's available on Amazon. It's a really great Audible. If you liked hearing me tell these stories, the Audible is really amazing. It's 9.5 hours of Clint. I'm going to be performing at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, August 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The stage adaptation of Wisdom of the Men. So in 59, it's going to be 18 international superstars, 5 U.S. presidents, and me in 59 minutes. That'll change your life forever as a one-man show. And I'm really excited about that. And that's what's going on.
Well, it's good thing you didn't quit writing a third time.
Right? I can you believe it? I quit writing twice and I came back. Unbelievable.
Third time's a charm.
And so much for being told your screenplay sucks too. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Hey man, I don't know. I didn't have the marketing. I don't know if my screenplays sucked or not. I really don't know. I mean, who's to say? I mean, Hollywood has made so many crappy movies over the years. Who's to say mine were the worst, right? Let's just say, for example, for argument's sake, let's just say they were great, or that I was a great actor. This is easier to understand. Let's just say I was a great actor. When I was on an audition, who was I competing against? Robert Downey Jr., Tom Cruise, Nicolas Cage. Who's going to get the job? Those guys. Why? Because those guys are who? And who am I? Nobody. And nobody wants to work with nobodies. And I know a lot of people think, well, that's true in Hollywood, but I'm not in the Hollywood game. It's true in everything. It really is. It's true in everything.
Yeah. No, even if I just put it in terms of sports, like you see all of these, and just basketball is my main sport, so I'll use that example. But all of the guys who retired without championships because they played their whole career against Michael Jordan, right? It's kind of the same idea. And even too, you mentioned Jack Canfield. The number of times that his book idea was rejected was, most people would have given up.
Hey, it ain't easy, but I don't know. It's only over when you give up. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is that like one of the scariest things I did was, Kevin Hart, he has a book called I Can't Make This Shit Up. That's the name of his book, right? Awesome Audible. I loved it. I've listened to it twice. And when I heard he said he went on a national tour of every single comedy club in America and did not break through. And then he went on a second tour of every single comedy club in America and still did not break through. And then he went on a third tour. And by that point, he was renting out basketball arenas. And he still did not break through. And it was at the end of his fourth tour of every comedy club in America, when he was renting out stadiums with 25,000 people and producing his own shows in stadiums, that he finally broke through and became the Kevin Hart that we know today. Kevin Hart. And when I heard that, I said to myself, man, I don't I've people say I'm funny. And I thought to myself, I just don't have that kind of drive where I'm going to go on a national tour of every single comedy club in America 3 times and not even break through, right? It's not going to happen. And I said, well, that's one thing I know I'm not going to do. I'm not going to be a comedian. And the next thing I know, I saw this thing on Facebook, and it was like the CEO Comedy Challenge. And for $6,000, I joined the CEO Comedy Challenge, and this guy was my coach, and he helped me to put together a 15-minute set. And I performed my 15-minute comedy set on the main stage at Caroline's Comedy Club on Broadway. And it was that was the scariest thing I've ever done. I mean, like Woody Allen says, and I met Woody Allen. There's a picture of me. There's a picture of me with everybody in my book, Wisdom of the Men. Every story that I've told, there's a picture of me with that person. Except for George Clooney, there's a picture of George Clooney holding my daughter with the look on his face like, wow, I'm lucky this isn't my daughter. Man, am I glad this isn't my daughter. That's what the look on his face is. So, but Woody Allen says, dying is easy. Comedy is hard. Man, going out on stage and doing my comedy set, that was the scariest thing I've ever done. Scarier than Walking on Fire with Tony Robbins. Scarier than writing a check for 7 figures to buy my house in Acapulco. Scariest thing I ever did. But I did it. And it's really been a great thing. And a lot of times I find, like, if you give up on something, that's when you get it. And that's what happened with me in the Today Show. One of my clients got on the Today Show, and I was bemoaning the fact with one of my publicity friends. I'm like, man, this girl comes to my seminar, Celebrity Launchpad, And less than 3 months later, she gets on the Today Show. And I've been doing this for 3 years and I haven't been on the Today Show. Man, I give up. I'm never going to get on the Today Show. The next week, I was on the Today Show. And they called me.
That's amazing. Yeah, it was a quick turnaround for New Year's. Well, Clint, I thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and sharing all these stories. So for everyone watching or listening, make sure at a minimum, get the Audible and listen to Clint tell all these stories. But otherwise, again, Clint, thank you for taking the time. And for everyone who watched or listened, thank you for letting us disrupt your everyday.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.